Hey everybody, this is Buzz Miller of Whammy Studios. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the guitars of the 80s. Alright, so I don't know what it is, but everybody's going back to the 80s for music. Well, actually, I do know what it is, because if you lived in the 80s, it was amazing. When you pay your artists, you get good art. In the 80s was probably the last time, 80s, beginning of the 90s, was the last time you could write an album and make a ton of money as an artist. So we had a lot of people in the music industry writing great music and putting great music out. The other cool thing about the 80s is there were so many things in fashion, both in fashion, but in music fashion. Everything from Devo to Metallica was coming up, and there were radio stations on the actual radio that would play new music and push new bands so you could hear the newest, latest, greatest. And it didn't matter if it was Duran Duran or if it was Motley Crue or if it was Van Halen. They were pushing it. And these people were trying as hard as they could to be better than the band that came out 2 weeks before them, because every 2 weeks there was a new band with a new album that was spectacular. And the 80s, although we call them the 80s, it kind of ran on to the 91, 92, 93, and then the 80s really didn't die until about 93, 94-ish, but some of the best 80s rock stuff, especially the guitar stuff, was 90, 91, 92, 93. So, yeah, we're gonna not talk about Howard Jones and Duran Duran today. We're gonna talk a little bit about more of how we sound like the 80s, because people keep calling back to the 80s, partly because the bands that are coming out with new music now are the same bands we loved in the 80s and the same people we loved in the 80s. George Lynch has got new music about every 2 to 3 weeks with a new band. We've got, Mr. Big just came out with a new album. I got it in the mail today. And, Taiketo's out there. And Extreme came out with their new album about a year ago. And they're still in the headlines and all this stuff, partly because we don't have a lot of really good new music, or I should say new bands. The new music tends to be bands that have been around 20, 30, 40 years making new music, because they know us, the fans, are still in love with them, will still buy the album and still go to the concerts. Concerts used to be to push the album so they could sell more albums and make more money. Now you don't sell albums, so now ticket prices are through the roof because they have to make money on the show, and they put out a new album so they can tour again. But let's stop that and talk about the 80s guitar. The 80s were so cool in the fact that there was an ad by Oldsmobile. This is not your father's Oldsmobile. Basically, it's, no, those old Oldsmobiles sucked. These new ones are sporty and cool, and you're thinking, Oldsmobile, cool, whatever. But that's the way the 80s music was. It was the sounds, it was what we were doing on the guitar, and it was the guitars. The Strats were cool, but that's your father's Strat. The Super Strat. We need more room for our hands so we can play up to the whatever fret. 21, 22 frets, not enough. Everything had to have 24, 25, 26, 27. There were a couple of guitars that had 36. There's one guitar that had to wrap around all the way to the inside. Any way you could get your hand up, because we actually played at the 27th and 29th and 32nd fret. Actually, we played up there. Okay, not my big fat hands. I stop at about 27. I'm like, I'm done. But that was not your father's Strat. We can't have a single coil in the back. We need a humbucker. Why? We put so much dirt in front of our Marshall that now we're getting screaming feedback, we're getting terrible hums, we're getting all sorts of stuff. So the humbucker started to become great. The DiMarzio, certainly the Duncan stuff started to really come out and make the 80s sound, pushing real hard, big, full, without a lot of the noise. So got to have a humbucker, at least in the bridge position, probably also in the neck position. Some of these that had humbuckers in a single coil space became kind of the rage. But, the DiMarzio and the Seymour Duncan, they made it so we could go to the next level. You know, we didn't have to do the Eddie Van Halen stuff, taking old stuff and dipping it in wax. They were making pickups that wouldn't scream, wouldn't feedback, wouldn't hum, do all these crazy things, but have more output, have more harmonics, be able to pick up all the intricate little details, because each guitarist wanted to be better than the one that came out 2 weeks ago. So we practiced harder, we played harder, we wanted to do crazy things that nobody else was doing. You know, two-hand tapping, that was great, but now I need to do more different things. So other cool things is we got the volume knobs out of the way, so we didn't turn them down, because we always wanted to be on 10. We were not trying to sound like some of the Father's Stratocasters. We wanted it always on 10, or Nigel Tufnell, you could go to 11. Then we love the whammy bars, so we needed locking tuners, locking tremolos. So the Floyd Rose came out, locks here, here. Use the whammy bar all you want. You don't hurt your strings. You don't go out of tune, where you're not changing the tension down here by your tuners. You're locked in, less variation for tuning disasters. We loved making weird and obnoxious noises with our whammy bars. That was a very important thing. Then my favorite part of the Super Strat, get the stupid $2 plastic piece of crap off the front of our guitar, because we spend money. We wanted everybody to look at us. We wanted everybody to listen to us. We were the masters. We paid money to have cool airbrush things and awesome looking guitars. I'm not going to put a $2 piece of plastic that's going to scratch and look ugly every time you hit it with a pick. And we're going to rear route everything so we can keep the front of the guitar looking pretty, like it should look, like this. Maple necks and maple fretboards. I was actually playing a maple fretboard, and I broke a string when I was trying to do this video just a minute ago. And it's the only maple fretboard I've got. I realized I'm looking around, everything I have is ebony or rosewood. So I own one maple fretboard guitar, and it's my Steve Brown Special, and I just broke a string on it, so I moved to this guy. I don't think they made a Californian in the 80s. I think that might have been 90, 91, 92. This is a 94 model, but I mean, again, it's an 80s guitar. It's just the Super Strat. How to get an 80s sound. We moved from having 2 and 3 guitarists per band to having 1 guitarist per band. So you're Van Halen, you are you are George Lynch, you are Warren DeMartini, this kind of thing. I can now take up all this space. I can now add reverb and echo to my sound. I can add more distortion to my sound, and it's not getting muddy because I am the 1 guitarist in the band. Now, the 2 guitarists in the band, they would either have to take off the echo and tighten up the reverb, or they would have to do like Tesla does, where Frankie Hannon's playing one part and Tommy Skeo's playing a completely different part. And that way they would leave each other distance and space. But again, they didn't push real hard on the echoes and the reverbs and stuff. But what we want to do, we want to push presence, we want to push mids, because we need mids, because we're going to see where we play is determining what we need in the way of what's coming out of the amp. Lows, you want to push the lows, and this is good for even now. If you're going to go into a recording studio and you find your guitar is getting really muddy and you're losing some of the power with the bass drum and with the bass guitar, what you want to do is you want to push your lows and then find a frequency and cut it off. So I say about 130. Cut it. Don't let anything below that. Don't let it come out of your amp, your Kemper, your head rush, whatever. Cut it off. You don't want it. Now you're sitting in your bedroom and you're kind of playing with those 50 hertz and you're going, oh, wow, that's cool. You don't want it in a recording, and you don't want it if you're trying to play your 80s stuff. Push the lows so you have some oomph down there, but cut them off at 130. Same thing on your high side. You want a high cut as well, somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 usually. Find out where it's at, push your highs, and then cut it. Some people like to cut it and then put it to your speaker cab or your IR, because you will bleed some natural lows and natural highs through, just because of the way the paper cone is made and the speaker and just the physics of it. You will get some highs bleeding through even if you've cut them all the way off. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get... You want those mids, you want those highs, but not piercing high in over there trying to be with a cymbal. You do not want that. The next thing, partly because of the mids in the presence, but partly because of your overabundance of distortion. Why do you want that? You want harmonics. 80s loved harmonics, artificial harmonics, natural harmonics. Here's how you find out if you have enough hair, enough distortion in front of your amp. You're going to take and you're going to do pull-offs on between 5 and 7 frets. We're going to do them on the A string right now, and you're going to take your finger and you're going to barely touch the string, and you're just going to push it back and forth on the string. Let me turn my guitar up first. If you don't hear that, you don't have enough distortion, you don't have enough presence. Pump a little more to it. You gotta have those harmonics. Why? Because you need that. If you don't have that artificial harmonic when you reach for it and it doesn't scream out, you don't have enough mids, you don't have enough presence, you don't have enough distortion. That's what we're trying to do. Harmonics, very important, both for doing, but also for when you're... Other things about the 80s. For some reason, I don't know who wrote this book, but when we pick up a guitar now, we go to the lowest register we can possibly find. And usually we'll detune it a bunch. And then we'll put it to D, which is actually C, which then we're flat fingered. Or we need a 7-string and 8-string. That was not it in the 80s. The 80s were all about the A. Very rarely would we find a song that started lower than A. Love that A, and always keep a rhythm or keep a percussion with your pick hand. We didn't do. We would go. And not only that, we're working on our A. Now, why is A cool? A is cool because both major or minor, we're right here in this area. We can play lower on the neck and higher on the neck and work on our solos that way, especially if we're trapped in the pentatonic minor box. So we can work both directions, and we still have lots of room if we want to octave up here. Why else A? A is great because all of your open strings except for the B are in key, both major and minor, with your open strings with your major chord, or with your root chord, we'll say. Why is that cool? Because you can do trick little things that are simple for even a beginner that sound great. Play with those open strings. Use triads off of those open strings. So let's just take the G string. I said G string. Let's take the G string and just do hammer-ons and pull-offs and just keep in key with an A minor. Simple. Sounds cool. Add it to your solos, add it to your fills. You can do that on any string but the B string. Open in key, great. Next thing we want to do, don't always play the whole chord. 80s people didn't play the whole chord. They either played like sides of the chord, or normally they would play, let's say we're on the D, they won't play 1, 5, 8. They'll play 1 or 2 notes. So let's just play the double stop, the 5 and the 8 off of that D. So there's 1, 5, 8. So now let's play with that. Let's screw with it. Let's bring it up and drop it down and make that sound where we're going to stay on the same chord, but we're going to make it move. Okay, real simple. I never left. But with adding, it's starting to sound like we're from the 80s. Now let's take that to another dimension. Let's add some, let's do some George Lynch. Never leave a chord alone. So when you're doing George Lynch, you go. Woo, what was that? Yeah, arpeggiate and palm mute. Palm mutes are very important. Why? You're adding dimension from your open notes to your palm muted notes where you're not going. You're going. So you're working on the meat of your hand, being able to palm mute and small articulations between open note and. So that's another thing we work on when we're playing our 80s. What else? Whammy bar stuff. Anything that's in key, just play with the whammy bar and it sounds right. So we're going to go back off those notes we were just on with the A minor. Okay, how about doing an octave off of some of the notes from the A minor pentatonic and then dropping the whammy bar as we're gaining the octave? Okay, that in and of itself isn't a cool solo, but if you're can add some flair to it. But grab that whammy bar. Always love to multiple string harmonics. Again, that's why we need all that dirt and all that presence so we can get harmonics on multiple strings at the same time. Make all those noises. Make all your horsies. That kind of thing. Yeah. So one of the things that you're going to notice, well, first of all, you're going to notice that when you're trying to play along with Nuno, you're trying to play along with Van Halen, A doesn't work because they all tune a half step low. Eddie started doing that and everybody followed. And so half of the 80s, that when you play that, it's actually because they're a half step low. So if you're trying to learn your Van Halen songs, you're trying to learn your Extreme songs, some of the other Sunset Strip stuff, 2.5 step low. I am not tuned to half step low. I am at A440, so adjust accordingly. But if you're trying to learn those songs and they're not making any sense because you're sitting there on the 4th fret, well, you need a 2.5 step low because they're just playing everything open A. Yeah, again, this is a kind of a throwaway video. It's just going to be quick, stupid, and easy because I'm testing out some new lights. I just plugged the board in a couple days ago for the first time, and I'm having a lot of technical difficulties. So just throwing a quick video out there just to run through some of the bugs. So this probably didn't teach you anything. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Yeah, that's that. Hey, we'll catch you later. Thanks for watching. Keep on rocking. Till next time.